There's this really fascinating disconnect in how we culturally process the major milestones of adulthood.
Oh, yeah, like the classic rites of passage.
Exactly. Like, you think about it, you graduate from university, they hand you this heavy piece of paper with a gold seal, and an entire auditorium of people just erupts into cheers.
Right. It's a very clearly defined, universally celebrated victory.
Totally. You cross the finish line. Or, you land your first serious job, sign that offer letter, and you probably go out to dinner with your friends to celebrate.
It feels like a massive, undeniable win.
It does. But then you hit the reality of securing, like, the most basic human need, which is shelter. You step into the world of renting your very first apartment, and suddenly that clear sense of victory is just, well, it's completely buyed.
Oh, completely obscured by a fog of logistical stress.
Right. Financial anxiety, interpersonal negotiation. And if you're navigating that highly specific, highly pressurized environment in a second language.
Which is so tough.
Yeah, operating at that B1 or B2 level, where you're conversational, but maybe you lack the granular vocabulary of real estate, it stops being a milestone.
It really does. It starts feeling like a survival test.
Exactly.
And you're hitting on a fundamental psychological reality here about language acquisition and environmental stress.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, when you're operating in a second language, your baseline cognitive load is already elevated. You're constantly translating, filtering, interpreting.
All right, your brain is already working overtime.
Exactly. Now, drop that already taxed brain into a high-stakes scenario like an apartment viewing.
Oh, man, yeah.
The landlord is talking super fast. There are major financial implications. Legally binding documents are looming. And other prospective tenants might be walking through the door at any second.
It's a complete nightmare.
It is the absolute definition of a cognitive bottleneck. The stakes feel incredibly high. And the pressure to not make a devastating mistake, like signing a contract you don't fully understand.
Or agreeing to a price that has hidden fees.
Exactly. The pressure is just overwhelming.
Which is exactly why we're dedicating today's deep dive to unpacking a solution to that exact bottleneck. So, if you are joining us today, welcome to Pathlight English.
We are so glad you're here.
We're looking at a highly practical, incredibly targeted curriculum designed specifically to teach the essential English language needed for navigating the rental market.
And it is so practical.
It really is. And we're going to do this by focusing on the core mission of this source material. Like, if you take away absolutely nothing else from our conversation today, burn this guiding principle into your memory.
Let's hear it.
Apartment English is exponentially easier when you know the key questions before you actually need to ask them.
Yes. That concept of knowing the questions beforehand is the bedrock of what linguists and psychologists call preloading.
Preloading, right.
Think about what happens in your brain when you don't have a specific script ready. The landlord finishes their pitch, they look at you expectantly, and your brain suddenly has to perform 5 complex tasks simultaneously.
Oh, I've been there. You freeze.
You completely freeze because you have to conceptualize what information you need, translate that concept into English vocabulary, arrange that vocabulary into grammatically correct syntax.
While also making sure your tone is culturally appropriate.
Exactly. And then you have to physically articulate it. If you don't have the specific targeted phrases already locked in, your working memory just maxes out.
You just start panicking about how to construct a sentence.
Right. Rather than focusing on the actual critical information the landlord is giving you.
It's the equivalent of trying to stitch your parachute together while you're already in free fall.
That's a great analogy.
You're so focused on the mechanics of not crashing that you completely miss the landscape.
Yeah, and by having these Pathlight English phrases preloaded, you bypass all of that on-the-spot processing. You just deploy the phrase.
It frees up an immense amount of mental energy.
It does. It allows you to actually look at, the water pressure in the shower, evaluate the safety of the neighborhood, and just make a sound decision for your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to set a very clear boundary for how we're approaching this material today. We are completely bypassing all that esoteric, impenetrable real estate jargon.
Oh, thank goodness. This is not a legal seminar.
Definitely not. We are not diving into complex contract law, zoning ordinances, or the minutia of property taxes.
Nobody wants that.
No. This entire exploration is focused purely on clear, functional, everyday adult life vocabulary. The English you can literally use this afternoon if you have an apartment viewing schedule.
Highly actionable.
Exactly. So we're going to walk through the actual chronological timeline of renting a space, starting with the absolute ground floor of any adult transaction.
Which is always the money.
Always the money. Because before you care about the view, before you care about the commute, there is only one variable that actually dictates whether you can live in a space.
It is the unavoidable filter. The financial foundation dictates the reality of the situation.
If the numbers don't align with your reality, the natural light in the living room is completely irrelevant.
Exactly. So let's look at the asking about cost section of the Pathlight English Guide.
Yeah, the very first piece of language they highlight is the most fundamental mechanism for establishing that financial baseline. The phrase is simply, how much is the rent?
How much is the rent? I mean, it's structurally basic, but its pragmatics, like how it functions in the real world, are incredibly important for a language learner to grasp.
Because it's so direct.
Right. The explanation provided in our source material notes that this is the primary standard way to ask for the monthly price of an apartment.
And I think what's crucial here is understanding the cultural mechanics of that directness. Because, depending on where you grew up or the cultural norms of your native language, initiating a conversation by instantly demanding to know the exact financial cost can feel incredibly blunt.
Oh, absolutely. It can feel like you're being aggressive or entirely transactional.
Yeah, you walk in, you shake hands, and boom, you ask for the price tag.
That is a very profound observation regarding cross-cultural communication. In many high-context cultures, bringing up money immediately is considered, well, pretty uncouth.
Right, you're expected to build rapport first.
Exactly. Discuss the weather, the architecture, maybe compliment the space, and slowly circle around to the financial details.
But what this Pathlight curriculum is implicitly teaching you through this phrasing is that the English-speaking rental market is a notoriously low-context, high-efficiency environment.
Directness about cost is not interpreted as rudeness.
Really?
Not at all. It is interpreted as competence.
Oh, interesting. It signals that you're a serious adult who respects everyone's time.
Precisely. Beating around the bush or using overly soft, vague language about money, like asking, what sort of financial commitment are we looking at here?
That actually creates friction, doesn't it?
It does. It causes confusion. The property manager wants to know if you're a viable candidate, and you need to know if this place is within your budget.
So, how much is the rent?
Mm-hmm.
Cuts through the noise.
Exactly. It's culturally appropriate, highly efficient, and perfectly polite.
And we should look at the usage note provided in the material regarding the word rent itself. As adults, obviously, we understand the concept of paying for shelter.
Sure.
But linguistically, the word rent carries a very specific operational definition in English. It implies a recurring, scheduled financial obligation.
You aren't asking for a lump sum purchase price.
Exactly. You are asking for the cyclical, usually monthly, baseline figure. The example sentence they provide simply grounds it in the physical space. How much is the rent for this apartment?
Let's actually demonstrate the rhythm of how this functions in reality. The source material provides these highly focused mini dialogues to model the interaction.
Perfect. Let's do it.
I'll take on the role of the property manager showing the space, and you can play the prospective tenant.
I'm ready. Let's set the scene. I'm walking into the living room, taking a look around. I am interested in the apartment.
Of course. What would you like to know?
How much is the rent?
See, notice the complete lack of hesitation in that exchange.
Yeah, it felt very natural.
The tenant states their interest, the manager opens the floor for questions, and the tenant immediately anchors the conversation to the most important metric.
It's clean. It's surgical. But as anyone who's ever lived independently knows, that baseline rent figure is almost never the actual final amount of money that leaves your bank account every month.
Unfortunately, no. The rent is just the cost of the empty box.
Right. Making that box actually habitable requires an entirely different set of expenses. Which brings us to the second critical phrase in the financial section of the guide.
Are utilities included?
Are utilities included?
This might be one of the highest leverage phrases a language learner can master in this context.
Okay, why is that?
Well, the explanation here is that this question determines whether the essential services required to run the apartment are bundled into that rent price, or if they represent separate additional financial liabilities.
Okay, I want to interrogate the word utilities for a moment.
Go for it.
If I put myself in the shoes of a B1 or B2 learner, utilities feels like a very clunky, almost bureaucratic piece of vocabulary.
It does sound a bit formal.
It sounds like something you read on a municipal tax form. My natural instinct, if I were trying to communicate efficiently with a limited vocabulary, would be to just use the concrete nouns I already know.
Like water and power.
Exactly. Why wouldn't I just say, Are water and electricity included?
It's a totally logical instinct to rely on concrete nouns. Water, power, gas. Those are tangible concepts.
Right.
Utilities is an abstract concept. But to understand why the Pathlight Guide pushes learners toward utilities, we have to talk about the linguistic concept of hypernyms and hyponyms.
Unpack that for us. What are those?
Okay, so a hyponym is a specific, narrow word. Water, electricity, internet, gas, trash collection, those were all hyponyms.
Got it.
A hypernym is the umbrella term that categorically contains all of those specific words. Utilities is the hypernym.
I see where this is going.
Right. Now, think back to our discussion about cognitive load. If you rely on the specific nouns, you have to mentally generate and verbally list every single one of them to ensure you are fully protected from hidden costs.
That sounds exhausting. Is water included? What about electricity? Do I pay for the trash collection?
Exactly. Is the heating gas or electric, and who pays for that?
And the danger is, if you forget to ask about one of them because you're stressed, you are entirely liable for it.
That's the trap.
You might successfully confirm that water and electricity are included, but completely forget to ask about heating. Then January arrives, a massive blizzard hits, and you are suddenly hit with a crippling heating bill because it wasn't covered.
Exactly. By forcing yourself to learn and deploy this one slightly bureaucratic umbrella term, utilities, you create a linguistic safety net.
A safety net. I like that.
The usage note in the material explicitly defines utilities as covering water, electricity, internet, and heating. When you ask, are utilities included? You are forcing the landlord to disclose the status of the entire category of services in one stroke.
Oh, wow. It's a massive efficiency hack. You learn one word, and it does the heavy lifting of 5 different concepts.
It transfers the burden of explanation completely onto the landlord. They now have to itemize the list for you, rather than you trying to guess what services exist.
That's brilliant. The example sentence provided is beautifully comprehensive. Are utilities included in the rent?
Let's run the mini dialogue for this so we can hear how it layers on top of the initial price discussion.
Okay, I'll play the landlord this time, stating the baseline price.
And I will be the tenant, making sure I'm not walking into a trap of hidden fees.
The rent is one amount per month.
Are utilities included?
It's such a sophisticated pivot. The landlord tries to present a simple, clean number, one amount per month, and the tenant immediately tests the boundaries of what that number actually buys.
It really demonstrates a high level of adult competence.
It shows you cannot be easily fooled by a low sticker price. So we've established the financial reality. You know the rent, you know what the utility situation is, and let's assume the numbers actually work for your budget.
The next massive hurdle you face isn't financial.
No, it's temporal. You have to figure out the logistics of time and legal commitment.
Moving from the abstract concept of affording the space to the physical reality of occupying it.
Which moves us into the asking about time and rules portion of the Pathlight Guide. And the immediate question that dictates whether you can actually live there is our third key phrase.
When is it available?
When is it available? The explanation here is straightforward. This phrase is used to ask for the specific date when you can legally take possession of the keys and move your physical belongings into the space.
The word available is so fascinating in English because of how wildly flexible it is across different contexts.
It really is. In a lot of languages, you have very specific words for a room being empty versus a person having free time versus an object being ready to purchase.
But in English, available is this incredibly versatile workhorse of a word.
Its semantic core always implies readiness for use or engagement, but the subject changes everything.
Right. If you ask a friend, are you available on Friday night? You're asking about their schedule. You're asking if their time is unallocated.
Yeah, and if you're in a romantic context and you ask if someone is available, you're asking about their relationship status. Are they single and unattached?
And here, applying it to real estate, the usage note perfectly translates that concept to a physical space.
Exactly. To ask if an apartment is available is to ask if it is legally unattached from a previous tenant, physically empty, clean, and ready for you to establish a relationship with it.
It's a great conceptual bridge for learners. You're taking a word you might already use to schedule a coffee date and applying it to a major legal transaction.
It really is.
And from a negotiation standpoint, the answer to when is it available dictates who has the leverage.
Oh, that's a great point.
If the landlord says it was available 2 months ago, they are bleeding money, and you have the power to negotiate the rent down.
Because they're desperate to fill it.
Exactly. But if they say it's not available until October and I have a waiting list, They hold all the cards.
The timeline is the ultimate leverage point. The example sentence anchors it to the noun. When is the apartment available?
Let's drop into the mini dialogue.
I'll be the renter expressing my initial approval of the space.
And I am the landlord waiting for your signal.
I like the place.
Great.
When is it available?
It is the natural pivot from emotional approval to logistical reality.
Now, assuming the availability aligns perfectly with your timeline, say, your current lease ends on the 31st, and this new place is available on the first place, you have to figure out the duration of your commitment.
You have to define how long you are legally tethered to this new landlord.
Which brings us to the fourth phrase in our guide. What is the lease term?
What is the lease term? This is a crucial phrase. The explanation provided is that it asks for the legal duration of the rental agreement.
I'm going to be honest, when I first encountered this phrase, it made me slightly uncomfortable.
Why is that?
Well, we set a boundary at the very beginning of this conversation that we were going to completely avoid complex legal jargon. And lease term sounds intensely legalistic.
It does.
It sounds like something a property attorney says in a boardroom. My instinct is that a regular person, especially someone learning the language, would just say, how long can I live here? Or how many months do I have to stay?
That's a totally fair point.
Why are we forcing them to adopt this lawyerly vocabulary?
It's a very valid critique. Lease term absolutely is legal jargon, but here is the critical distinction.
Okay.
It is the one piece of legal jargon that has become so universally embedded in everyday English adult life that it's no longer optional.
Ah, I see. It's crossed over from the courtroom into the living room.
Exactly. It's the unavoidable baseline. If you ask a landlord, how long can I live here? You're asking an open-ended philosophical question.
True.
A friendly landlord might say, oh, you can stay for years. We love long-term tenants. That sounds nice, but it provides zero legal definition.
It doesn't tell you when they can raise the rent.
Right. And it doesn't tell you when you're allowed to move out without paying a penalty.
It's way too vague.
Way too vague. A lease is the specific physical or digital contract you are going to sign. The term is the uncompromising temporal boundary of that contract.
But the genius of the Pathlight English usage note is how it instantly demystifies this intimidating phrase.
It takes this heavy legal concept and breaks it down into the standard everyday answers you are actually going to receive.
Right. The usage note explicitly points out the answers will almost always fall into three simple categories: 6 months, 1 year, or month to month.
That is the magic of asking the specific question. You deploy a slightly elevated formal phrase, what is the lease term? And it forces the landlord to respond with a very simple standardized metric.
It's a 1-year lease, or we do month to month.
Exactly. You don't need to understand the depths of contract law. You just need to know which of those three buckets this apartment falls into. It's a highly protective piece of language.
It establishes you as someone who understands the rules of the game. Let's look at the example sentence, which is just the phrase standing on its own power. What is the lease term?
Let's model this in the mini dialogue. I'll be the manager, trying to move things along.
And I'll be the tenant, and I have just finished walking through the apartment. The apartment looks good.
The lease is standard.
What is the lease term?
I love that dialogue because it highlights a classic evasion tactic.
And the standard thing.
Yes. The manager says the lease is standard. That means absolutely nothing.
Right. Standard in New York City is different from standard in a rural town.
Exactly. By immediately following up with, what is the lease term? The tenant refuses to accept a vague platitude. They demand the actual metric.
It's an incredibly powerful conversational move. You are holding them accountable to the details.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's shift the narrative forward. We've navigated the initial gauntlet. You negotiated the rent. You confirmed the utilities. You moved in on the available date. And you're 3 months into your 1-year lease term.
The dust has settled. You are living your life.
The honeymoon phase in the new apartment.
Exactly.
But it's a universal law of physics that eventually something in that apartment is going to fail. Entropy always wins.
It really does.
A pipe will burst, a wire will short out, or an appliance will die.
It is inevitable. The built environment decays.
Which catapults us into the third major section of the Pathlight Guide, describing repairs. And this is where the language requirements shift dramatically.
You're no longer negotiating a contract. You are managing an ongoing relationship.
Exactly. You have a problem that needs to be solved, but you also have to maintain a civil relationship with the person who holds the power to solve it. You want action, but you don't want hostility.
It is an incredibly delicate tightrope to walk. You must be accurate and firm, but if you sound accusatory, the landlord might become defensive and delay the repair.
And no one wants that. The guide introduces this dynamic with a classic universal apartment failure. Phrase number 5 is, the sink is leaking.
The sink is leaking. The explanation here is highly functional. You deploy this phrase when water is escaping from its intended pathway and creating a problem.
What I find so interesting about this phrase is what it doesn't require you to say.
Yes, it's an exercise in linguistic minimalism.
Because if you wake up and there's a puddle of water under your bathroom vanity, the sheer number of things that could be wrong is massive.
It could be a deteriorated PVC trap,
Or a blown O-ring.
a rusted supply line, or a cracked basin, all of which require highly specialized technical plumbing vocabulary.
Vocabulary that native speakers often don't even possess, let alone a B1-B2 language learner.
Exactly. And the brilliance of the sink is leaking is that it completely absolves the speaker of any diagnostic responsibility.
You are not a plumber.
No, you are merely a neutral observer reporting a symptom.
That distinction between symptom and root cause is vital. The usage note in the curriculum expands on this framework, offering other highly practical phrases built on the exact same logic.
They list, the light is not working, the door is stuck, and the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out.
Notice the grammatical structure across all of those. The sink is leaking, the light is not working, the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out.
Yes.
They are heavily reliant on continuous or progressive tenses. Why is that specific grammatical choice so important here?
It is a brilliant use of the present continuous tense to emphasize the immediate, ongoing, active nature of the problem.
Okay, explain the difference.
Well, if you say the sink leaks, using the simple present, it almost sounds like a permanent character flaw of the apartment. Oh, that's just the sink that leaks. It always does that.
Right, like it's just a quirky feature.
Exactly. But by saying the sink is leaking, you are creating a sense of active, real-time urgency.
It implies this is happening right now.
Right. It's an abnormal state, and it requires an intervention to stop it.
It's stating an objective fact about the present moment. It removes all emotion. The example sentence places it in a location. The sink is leaking in the bathroom.
Let's demonstrate how this sounds in the mini dialogue. You be the landlord answering the phone.
Okay. What needs to be fixed?
The sink is leaking.
It is impossible for the landlord to be offended by that. You haven't blamed them.
You haven't said your cheap plumbing broke.
Right. You simply stated the undeniable physical reality of the situation.
But simply stating the reality isn't enough to actually get the water to stop.
No, you have established the symptom, but now you have to formally request the cure. You have to prompt the landlord to take action.
Which leads seamlessly into phrase number 6. Could you send someone to fix it?
Could you send someone to fix it? The explanation notes that this is the standard mechanism for requesting that a repair professional be dispatched to your location.
I really want to spend some time analyzing this one because the usage note in the Pathlight Guide simply describes this phrase as polite and practical.
That feels like a massive understatement.
It really is. There's a very deep, complex layer of sociolinguistics operating beneath the surface of this sentence.
We're entering the realm of politeness theory, aren't we?
We absolutely are.
Right. Because if you think about the power dynamic, the landlord is legally obligated to maintain a habitable space. The lease guarantees working plumbing. So technically, the tenant has the right to demand a fix.
Technically,
You could say, fix my sink immediately, or you need to send a plumber today. But native English speakers almost never use that kind of direct imperative structure in this scenario.
never.
Why do we wrap our demands in this soft, questioning language?
It comes down to the concept of negative face in linguistic pragmatics.
Negative face.
Yeah, every human being has a psychological desire for autonomy, the desire to feel like they are not being imposed upon or ordered around.
Sure.
When you tell someone, fix this, you are directly threatening their autonomy. You're issuing a command which inherently triggers resistance and defensiveness.
Even if it's technically their job.
Exactly.
You're treating them like a servant, which damages the relationship.
Exactly. So English relies heavily on modal verbs to soften the impact.
Like could.
Right. Could is a modal verb of possibility. By phrasing the demand as a question, could you send someone, you're creating linguistic distance.
So you're technically asking if they have the ability to do it, rather than commanding them to do it.
Exactly. You're offering them the illusion of choice.
It's a velvet glove over an iron fist.
Precisely. It is a highly formalized stance. Both parties know it's a demand, but the packaging of the demand preserves the landlord's dignity and autonomy.
That is so interesting.
Furthermore, the second half of the phrase, send someone to fix it, is incredibly strategic.
How so?
It pivots the focus away from the problem and entirely onto the solution. You aren't dwelling on the water damage, you're proposing the logical next step.
Oh, I see. It establishes you as a reasonable, collaborative tenant who understands standard operating procedures.
Yes, it is the ultimate manifestation of being polite and practical. You get exactly what you want without burning any social capital.
The example sentence mirrors the phrase perfectly. Could you send someone to fix it?
Let's role play this interaction.
Okay, I am the tenant sitting in a freezing apartment.
And I am the property manager taking your call.
The heater is not working.
I am sorry to hear that.
Could you send someone to fix it?
It is a totally frictionless exchange. The problem is identified neutrally, empathy is offered, and the solution is politely requested.
It's masterful. Okay, let's step out of the timeline for a moment. We've looked at the financials, the logistics, and the repairs.
Yeah.
But I want to rewind the tape.
Let's go back.
I want to go back to the very first day. We're back on the initial apartment tour.
We're back in the high-pressure zone.
Exactly. You've walked through the space. You deployed your questions perfectly. You asked about the rent. You checked the utilities. You confirmed the lease term.
You've gathered all the data successfully without overloading your cognitive capacity.
The preloading strategy worked perfectly.
Yes.
But now the tour is over. You're standing in the kitchen, and the atmosphere shifts. The landlord looks at you. They might pull out a clipboard. They tell you that 3 other people have looked at the apartment today, and another couple is coming this afternoon. They are applying immense, deliberate psychological pressure on you to make a commitment right this second.
This is the moment where many people, especially those operating in a second language, completely fold.
You just panic.
Yeah, the artificial urgency created by a salesperson can induce a state of panic, leading to rushed, deeply regrettable financial decisions.
Which brings us to the making a decision section of the guide. This is about establishing boundaries and maintaining agency over your own life. You do not have to be a victim of momentum.
Oh, no, you don't.
And the primary defensive tool you have is phrase number 7. I need to think it over.
I need to think it over. The explanation provided is that this phrase is utilized when you require time and space before committing to the rental agreement.
Now, I want to talk about the anxiety of using this phrase.
It's a real fear.
A lot of people, particularly those who are eager to please or who feel insecure about their language skills, are terrified of setting a boundary like this.
Right. They worry that saying, I need to think it over, sounds like a polite brush-off.
Like you're rejecting the landlord, or worse, that you're going to insult them and lose the apartment entirely.
Yeah.
We use similar language when we want to escape a pushy salesperson in a clothing store, right?
Oh, I'll think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Does this phrase damage your standing as an applicant?
It's a very common fear,
Yeah.
but it fundamentally misunderstands how professional transactions operate.
Okay, tell me why.
The usage note in the Pathlight material explicitly clarifies this. It states that think it over functionally means consider it carefully. It is not a dismissal.
Let's dig into the linguistics of the phrasal verb itself. Why think it over instead of just think about it?
That preposition over changes the entire geometry of the thought process.
How?
If you think about something, you're just directing your attention toward it. It's static. But to think something over implies a spatial, comprehensive examination.
It suggests you are turning the concept around in your mind, looking at it from above, analyzing all the angles, checking it against your budget, and sleeping on it.
It implies a deliberate, methodical process.
Exactly. It signals a high degree of maturity. When you tell a landlord, I need to think it over, you are communicating. I recognize the gravity of this legal and financial commitment. I am not an impulsive person. I make calculated decisions.
Ironically, setting that firm boundary actually makes you look like a much more reliable, stable, and desirable tenant.
It really does. It proves you aren't going to sign a lease today and break it tomorrow.
It's a verbal shield. It deflects the high-pressure sales tactic while preserving your dignity and your candidacy.
And the example sentence provides a great template for softening the boundary if you actually do love the space. I like the apartment, but I need to think it over.
It affirms your interest while firmly halting the momentum of the sale. Let's demonstrate this dynamic in the mini dialogue. I'm going to hold my ground as the empowered tenant.
And I am going to apply the pressure as the landlord. Would you like to apply it today?
I need to think it over.
It completely neutralizes the urgency. The conversation cannot proceed to a signature until you have completed your deliberate process.
But what if that process is already complete? What if you walked into the apartment, the sunlight was hitting the hardwood floors perfectly, the rent was under budget, utilities were included, and you experienced an absolute moment of clarity?
You know it's the one.
You don't need to think it over. You want it, and you want to lock it down before the couple come in this afternoon even gets to see it.
Then you must transition from gathering information to initiating the administrative machinery.
Which brings us to our final piece of language, phrase number 8. What are the next steps?
What are the next steps? The explanation defines this as the way to ask for instructions on how to proceed if you want to secure the apartment.
The usage note for this phrase is my absolute favorite in the entire curriculum.
What does it say?
It explicitly states, this phrase is useful in many adult situations. It is acknowledging that this is not just real estate vocabulary. This is a master key for navigating modern corporate and adult life.
It really is a foundational piece of professional communication. And if we analyze why it's so effective, it brings us full circle back to our core concept of cognitive load.
Yes.
Imagine you decide you want the apartment. If you don't have this phrase, your brain suddenly faces a massive wall of unknown administrative procedures.
Right. Starts spiraling. Do I need to pay a deposit right now? Do you need a cashier's check or a wire transfer?
Do I have to fill out a paper application or is it an online portal?
Do you need my employer's phone number? Do you run a credit check?
Your working memory is immediately overwhelmed trying to guess the landlord's specific proprietary system.
But the beauty of what are the next steps is that it completely short-circuits that entire spiral.
Exactly. You don't need to know any of the procedural vocabulary. You take the entire burden of explaining the complex administrative process and you hand it directly back to the expert.
You're saying, I have made my decision to proceed. You own the system. You provide the roadmap.
It forces them to give you a chronological checklist. It's confident, it's proactive, and it requires virtually zero processing power on your end.
You just deploy the phrase and take notes on what they tell you to do.
It is the ultimate adult cheat code.
Truly. The example sentence places it squarely in the rental context.
Yeah.
What are the next steps if I want to apply?
Let's run the final mini dialogue. I am the manager, ready to close the deal.
And I'll be the tenant who has found their dream apartment. I am interested in the apartment.
Right.
What are the next steps?
And from there, the manager will literally hand you the instructions. The ambiguity is completely removed.
Okay, we have systematically unpacked an incredibly dense, highly strategic linguistic toolkit. We've looked at the directness of asking for rent, the efficiency of umbrella terms like utilities,
The leverage of availability.
the boundary setting of lease terms and thinking things over, and the politeness of repair requests.
But analyzing the theory is only the first half of the equation.
Right. The theory is useless if you cannot access the language under pressure. We have to move this information from passive understanding into active, immediate recall.
Which is why the Pathlight English Guide concludes with a dedicated application section.
And we're going to adapt that right now. We are not going to do a simple pop quiz. Instead, I want you, the listener, to visualize a narrative. We're going to mentally walk through the ultimate apartment tour.
Let's do it.
I want you to picture the space, feel the pressure of the interaction, and when the moment arises, I want you to mentally deploy the exact phrase we just analyzed. My co-host will set the scene, and I will verbalize the target phrase to model the response.
Let's build the visualization. You arrive at the building. The landlord shakes your hand, then opens the door. You walk into the living room. It's bright and clean. You know the most critical variable is the baseline cost. You turn to the landlord to establish the financial foundation. What is the precise phrase you use?
How much is the rent?
The landlord gives you a number that sounds remarkably low. Your instincts kick in. You know that the baseline cost rarely covers the operational reality of the apartment.
Yeah.
You need to use your hypernym, your umbrella term, to check for hidden fees regarding water, power, and heat. What do you ask?
Are utilities included?
The landlord confirms they are included. The financial picture is perfect. Now you need to determine if the logistics of time work in your favor. You need to know when this physical space is legally untethered and ready for your possession. What is the question?
When is it available?
It is available next week. Perfect. But you need to know the parameters of the legal commitment. You cannot accept a vague answer about how long you can stay. You need the exact duration of the contract. How do you ask for that boundary?
What is the lease term?
It is a standard one-year commitment. You agree. Let's fast forward. You have been living there for 3 months. You walk into the bathroom, and water is pooling on the floor beneath the basin. You are not a plumber. You just need to report the ongoing active symptom neutrally. What do you say?
The sink is leaking.
The symptom is reported. Now, You must navigate the sociolinguistics of politeness. You need to demand an intervention without threatening the landlord's autonomy. You use your modal verbs to craft a polite, solution-oriented request. What is a phrase?
Could you send someone to fix it?
Perfect. Now, let's pull you out of the apartment and back to that very first tour. You are standing in the kitchen. The landlord is pressuring you. They have another applicant waiting outside. You refuse to be bullied into a rushed financial decision. You deploy your verbal shield to buy time and space. What do you say?
I need to think it over.
But wait, you look around one last time. You realize this is the one. You drop the shield. You want to initiate the administrative machinery and force the landlord to provide the roadmap for securing the space. You deploy the ultimate adulting phrase. What is it?
What are the next steps?
If you were able to mentally track alongside that narrative, if those phrases felt accessible to you as the scene shifted, you have successfully preloaded your parachute.
You have taken a massive, intimidating adult milestone and reduced the cognitive load required to survive it.
You have taken control of the interaction.
Before we sign off, I think it's important to reflect on the deeper implications of what a curriculum like Pathlight English actually provides.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because we've spent this entire deep dive talking to vocabulary as a purely transactional tool, a way to get an apartment.
But language is never purely transactional. It is deeply cultural.
Exactly. I want to leave you with this thought to mull over. When you study domain-specific vocabulary like these 8 phrases for navigating real estate, you are not just learning definitions. You are actually decoding the unwritten social contracts of a society.
It's a map of cultural values. Think about the stark contrast we just explored between negotiating money and negotiating repairs.
It's wild.
We learned that when it comes to initiating a transaction, the English-speaking cultural norm heavily prioritizes intense, unapologetic directness. How much is the rent? You look them in the eye and demand the data. It values efficiency over elaborate rapport building.
But the moment you transition from a negotiation into an ongoing relationship, like when you need a repair, the entire cultural norm inverts.
Suddenly, directness is viewed as aggressive. The language bends over backward to be accommodating and indirect.
Could you send someone? You're learning that this culture values explicit boundaries in commerce, but demands linguistic deference when managing interpersonal obligations.
You're learning how the society balances capitalism and community. You are learning the culture through the grammar.
The language is the map. And to ensure you can actually read that map when you need it, we want to echo the final call to action provided directly in the Pathlight English source material.
Your homework is highly practical.
Practice 3 questions you would ask before renting an apartment. Do not just read them. Select the 3 phrases from today that you find most challenging, stand in front of a mirror, and physically articulate them until the muscle memory is established.
Make the language your own. Preload the script.
Well, we've thoroughly mapped this terrain today. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the practical, empowering tools provided by Pathlight English.
It's been great.
If you found this deep dive valuable in your journey to master the complexities of language and adult life, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future explorations.
See you next time.
Until next time, remember, the landscape of independence can be incredibly daunting, but when you enter the room with the right questions already locked in your mind, you hold the power to shape the entire conversation. Take care, everyone.